Welcome to this Puna Kōrero meeting for the 23rd of March 2023. Usually to start us off, I would ask Taku to lead us in karakia. Taku, I think just because you're coming in remotely, I might ask Councillor Hayward to do so. It might be a little bit easier. So, Councillor Hayward, would you be happy to lead us off in karakia?
Keep up, Taku. Toru, wha. Whakataka tahau ki te uru. Whakataka tahau ki te tonga. Kia mā ki kina ki uta. Kia mā tā tara ki tai. E hi ake ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. So first of all, apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Duncan. Are there any others? No? All right, thanks very much. Well, I will put those. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Waddle, thanks very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. Public forum. We have no request to speak in public forum, noting that those that are here to speak today will be as part of a core agenda item. Conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts? No. There are no items of extraordinary business, so I'll move now to confirm the minutes of our 2 March Te Puna Kōrero meeting. I will put those. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett, thanks very much. Are there any comments or amendments to the minutes? No? All right, well, I will put those. All in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. So this brings us to item 7.1, the hearing of submissions for Tiriti Hall consultation. So first of all, I'll move the report to open for discussion. Could I have a seconder? Mayor Baker, thank you very much. So just to remind councillors, today we're here for hearing submissions. We will not be making any substantive decisions today, and we're not here to have a debate today. So you are welcome to ask questions of clarification, but any substantive issues, we will be discussing those in our Te Puna Kōrero meeting next month when we make a decision on this. So just to remind everyone of that. For the speakers that are here, I'll ask you to begin coming up soon. Just a reminder, you have 5 minutes. 5 minutes includes time for questions. You will hear a bell at 4 minutes. So if you hear that bell and you haven't wrapped up your presentation and you'd like time for questions from councillors, please make sure you wrap up your submission at that point to allow some questions to be asked. We just have to be quite tight with our time, just because we do have a few submitters. And I'll note as well, we do have one extra submitter than was initially noted, but that has all been organised. There's no problems there. So before we kick off, I will just double check if any officers need to speak to this at all before we jump in, or can we go straight into hearing submissions?
Straight into hearing submissions.
Okay, cool. Thanks very much. Could I invite Pamela Outen up to speak?
Good morning. Thank you for hearing me. I'm not going to go over my submission, and I'll be fairly brief. I've lived in Porirua for 59 years in Titahi Bay, and in at least 50 of those years I've been involved, and my husband have with me, in school committees, school boards, Whitireia Board, Mana College Board, Porirua Foundation, and the School for Teenage Parents, all involving education in some sort or other and looking after the interests of young people. Some of the stories that I could tell you from the School for Teenage Parents about what happens when kids are on the street and not warm, safe and loved are horrendous. Tiriti Hall is currently used by Kids Club, and I totally support that. Young children, if they are not looked after, then they invariably are getting into mischief. It doesn't matter how good the kids are or how careful the parents are. That's what happened. It happened with my own kids, of which I had 4. I've heard the argument that the club is a commercial activity, and that it shouldn't be a commercial activity. It should be for the community. It is a community facility at the moment, despite the fact that Kids Can is a commercial activity and clearly makes money. it is still a community benefit to over 100 children and their parents weekly, sometimes more than that. I've noted the argument that the hall could be used for a drop-in centre. I've seen no figures on how or how many people are interested in such activities, and seriously doubt if it would be used 5 days a week, which is what the Kids Club is used. The Kids Club also leaves it open for 1 day a week at least for a Mana College leadership issues. The kids come. Currently, the configuration does not make it simple for other people to use it in the time when the kids are not there prior to school and after school. If we were serious about it being used for the whole community, surely the configuration in the hall could be made so that it could be used for all sorts of people to use it after the kids go to school and before they come back at 3, some sort of storage facilities which would make it easier for the children's stuff to be put away, and that currently the configuration is useless for that sort of thing. I really don't have anything else to say other than that. I do not think there is anything more important these days than keeping kids safe, warm and fed. And this community service, despite it being a commercial service, goes a long way for that to happen. And I can't feel more strongly about it than that. So thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll just check if there are any questions of clarification from any councillors. No? All right. Well, thank you very much. All right. Our next submitter is Todd Johnston from Titahi Bay Amateur Radio Club.
Good morning, all councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm really here just to support the club. We have access and we use the hall. We are a community service. The AREC, several members of our club are involved in AREC, so that's search and rescue. Also, it's in a good location. Should we need emergency communications in an event, perhaps like what happened in the Hawke's Bay, it's available. We need it there. We need to be able to step in. We've got full HF, VHF, UHF facilities. We've got standby power. We've got everything running there. So hopefully we never ever need it. We're located next to the fire station. We're on high ground. It's a good place. Should we lose our space, our service to the community, if needed in an emergency, is severely hampered. We would need somewhere else to have our gear available. We can't just go and set up. We need it there and then in case of a civil emergency. We meet Tuesdays socially as a group. It's a really good space for us. That's really all I have to say. Yeah. And just in the document, I see there's some really nice pictures of people wondering what AREC and what we do as ham radio operators. There's some really good pictures and a little bit of explanation from some of our submitters within the document here. Any questions from the floor?
I've got a question from Councillor Leggett.
Sorry, Todd, just out of interest, what's your standby power?
We have a generator available in the back room, in our equipment room. We also have fully charged up large battery cells, which come from a UPS system. So we can, we're good to go. And we're also portable. That's why we once a year we do a thing called the Jock Light Field Days, and that's it's done to work other radio stations, but they're all set out in the field. We went to Battle Hill, set up in a tent. We used our generators, and that's something that might come up in an emergency. And a lot of times hams have been called on, particularly in the Hawke's Bay, to run an AREC for search and rescue. Multiple members of our club are involved with AREC. They also, we have four-wheel drive members within the club, so we've got other things that can help the community should be needed.
All right, I don't think there are any other questions. Councillor Hayward.
Thanks, Todd, for coming in, and thank you for the group's submission. If either options 2 or 4, which are not the options that the group, the club, is supporting, were to be in place, or something else akin to those 2 options, is it the club's view that there would not be an ability in either of those options to provide an arrangement with the club
In reference to what? Sorry,
in terms of continuing to use the space as it currently has?
I don't really understand the question, really. I can't speak on behalf of the club, but if we don't have the space available, we can't be there if needed.
Let me rephrase. If instead of options 1 or 3, 2 or 4 used instead, do you think that it's impossible that you could still be able to use that space or be able to make an arrangement or work alongside whatever that model is to try and secure continued use of that space under the current
Not
space?
sure of the options that you speak of, but we can't have everybody going in to access the space because we have valuable equipment set up there all the time.
Understand?
Yeah, I
No.
don't really understand your question. I'm sorry.
You're using an existing portion of the space already.
Yeah.
I'm just saying about whether or not under options 2 or 4, whether or not you would be able to continue to make an arrangement under the new model. But I think I've answered my question.
I don't think so. I'm sorry, because
Okay.
we have a very small space out of the 2 spaces that are available for the kids club, and our space is really not practical. It's quite tight and small. It doesn't serve a lot of use for a larger community group or for the general community.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got no more
Sorry,
questions.
I had the misunderstanding.
No, that's all right. You've answered my question. Thanks, Todd.
I just didn't understand.
All good.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'll just check if there are any other questions. Councillor Philo.
Okay. Oh, just to verify, Todd. So I think what Councillor Hayward was referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if there was, I think option 2 was the booking system, so different groups coming in, and I think the question would be something like, if there was groups maybe coming into that other room, would that affect you guys?
Oh, okay. Into the space of where the childcare is.
I believe so. Yeah.
That wouldn't affect us at all.
Okay.
Our space is probably not. You could imagine if we had kids at our space, they'd be twiddling knobs and playing with electronics equipment we don't want them to play with. We're big enough kids to do that ourselves. And we know what we're doing.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. And thanks for coming in too. Yeah.
Thank you. That clarifies it. Thank you.
All right. Cool. I think that wraps up everything. Thank you very much. Could I next please invite Wendy Leary?
Good morning, and like Pam, I've been part of the Shitahebe Bay community since 1956, which tells you a little bit about how old I am. I'd have to say that I was very confused about how and when I was going to be speaking this morning. Looking at the officer's report, I have 10 minutes, including questions. Now I'm told it's 5 minutes. So I'm sorry, but I'm left with some confusion as to actually what is being expected of me. However, I am now speaking now to my oral submission, and I'm just about wanting to know that what I have to say may be minuted, because I don't believe that public forums are minuted. So is my comment now being minuted and being forwarded to the committee for comment?
My understanding of this is that the recorded submission is your written submission. This is an opportunity today to go over anything specifically you'd like councillors to be particularly aware of, and for questions to be asked as well. I don't believe it's further minuted beyond that. Also, I will note that this meeting is recorded and it will be available online afterwards as well.
So my position is, and I'm assuming that you've all read my submission, in which I didn't support any of the 4 options. My position is that the consultation process to date is just a rubber stamping exercise for predetermined outcomes. It seems to me that this committee is being asked to give retrospective approval to what has already been done. There has been insufficient community involvement in developing recommendations, which is a critical step as far as I'm concerned that's been left out. And in reading the options, there are more questions than answers. For example, what will it cost to attend to outstanding maintenance? Costings and income seem to assume that the hall is in a fit-for-purpose state, ready to be leased without any financial input. Anyone who's visited the hall will know that that is far from the truth. Income streams are unclear because we do not have a definitive idea of who future tenants, casual or regular, users might be. This is where local knowledge and networks can be very effective. The history of the hall is important to the community too. The officer's report read the timeline of the hall's use is erroneous. It stated that the library moved to the former Plunkett Rooms in 2001. This move is very much more recent, when black mould was found in the space leased in the shopping centre. The library moved at that point, and that space is now the Shitahi Bay Cafe. This is an occasion when local knowledge could be critical. So I must say that it puts in doubt for me if that information is incorrect, what else might be incorrect. So I therefore go to my initial proposal that before this committee makes a decision, that consideration be given to my proposal of the formation of a community working group that can look into and support or amend what is to be presented in the officer's report. Detailed analysis of the submission to date, I reiterate, is insufficient, and further input from the community is needed before a final decision is made. I think that the options that have been presented for consideration had not received sufficient input from the community. That more of the community's views by people who actually know the community, and I do not believe that postponing a decision is difficult. There does not seem to be any urgency to make a decision when transparency could be more apparent. And just to conclude, I just would like to point out to some of you that I was very involved in the community hall process, and the resource consent application that was funded by us ratepayers, the front page was actually a picture of the Tiriti Hall and the history of the Tiriti Hall. So resource consent for demolition was actually given for the Tiriti Hall back then. So I'm afraid that my belief in the veracity of documentation is somewhat limited because of these points that I've made. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Councillor Ford.
Sorry, just a quick question of clarification, and possibly for our staff as opposed to Wendy. Can we just get some clarity around the expiry of the lease and why this needs to happen now?
Well, the lease expires at the end of next year.
Sorry, can I get one of the staff members to give us...
Ruben?
Through the chair. The lease is up, so these are just options papers for what we might do going forward to renew. And so we're just going through due diligence of consultation and putting options up. It's coming up for option. Officer Kate Bucock is here with those exact details.
End of June, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? No? All right, thank you very much. Could I invite our next speaker, Wiremu Grace? Is Wiremu here? No, or I'll note that Wiremu is not here. We are actually a minute ahead of schedule, so if he comes back in, he can jump back in at the end. So we'll go through to the next speaker, Eileen Holmes.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry I was a little bit late coming in.
No worries.
Off to school. I am the current leaseholder of 29A Tiriti Road, and the lease did expire at the end of last year, but we were given an extension till June this year because of this process. I did write to council last year before the lease expired, and I actually asked at that time if we could look at extending our lease for another 2 years. I said a year or two, but initially, when we got this lease in 2019, it was a unanimous decision at that council meeting to give us a 5-year lease. And when it came to the sign-off, a few weeks later, it was reduced down to 3 years. But besides that, I thought with COVID, we'd only had the lease since the end of 2019. By March, we'd gone into, we had a 9-week lockdown for the schools. We never went back to the 18th of May. And then we went into a second lockdown on the 18th of August 2021, and that was for another 3 weeks. So, like everybody, we've been affected with COVID, not just us, obviously everybody, but we're still feeling it as well. You know, we've got schools that are sometimes shutting down classrooms, 2 or 3 classrooms at a time, because teachers got COVID, kids have got COVID, but they can't get relievers in. At the last meeting, it was asked that, you know, would we share? Well, we had no problem sharing. We have been sharing. We've actually at the moment got a group from Puna College, they're young leaders. They're using it on a Wednesday during the day. I don't give them a key, but I go and unlock for them. If they do need a key, if they're going to be out in the community doing stuff, I give them my key, and they understand that I need that key back that day, because otherwise, you know. So I haven't got keys floating around out there. Other people that want to use the hall, the Vintage Radio Club, they had an agreement with Horizons when Horizons were the leaseholder. They want to come back, but because of COVID, they put the kibosh on that. There's also a knitting club for, I think they knitted for the Nico Wards, and obviously because of us having the amount of kids that we're having through the building, they just didn't feel that it was safe for them to. But obviously these people want to come back, but we're still, you know, I mean, we are still going through COVID in some ways, you know, so I don't know what else to say actually, other than we would like to stay in the building. It's handy. We have children from schools throughout the community, even into the wider Porirua area, Te Kura Māori. We have a half a dozen or more children coming each day from their school, because there is no after school care, and luckily the bus stop right outside the hall, so we don't have to worry about little ones trying to, you know, walk any distance to get to us, you know. I really don't know what else to say actually.
Well, thank you very much. I will check if there are any questions. Any councillors have any questions of clarification? Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora, Eileen. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for the submission. The only question I have is, can you just reconfirm that you are the only provider in Titahi Bay that provides after-school care service for kids?
I'm not the only after-school care provider, but I am the first after-school care provider that's set up in Te Bay. We've been operating for just shy of 30 years. There is another one at Te Bay School who I believe will take children from other schools, but they do not provide a pick-up service where we do. So we have a walking bus that operates from Te Bay School. They pick up the St Pius children on the way by. I'm transporting children by vehicle from Ngāti Taua and Te Bay North School, and the other children that we have arrive either walk from TBI, but they're a bit older, so they're allowed to walk on their own to us. And then we have other children that arrive in off the bus, not just from Te Kura Māori, but from the art college, the intermediate level children, not college level. And we have in the past had Tawa Intermediate, that those are children that have gone through our program and gone on to Tawa Intermediate. So that's chops and changes depending on what schools kids go to, you know.
Okay. No more questions.
Councillor Waddle.
Thanks, Eileen. Just on what Pamela highlighted earlier around the configuration and layout, is the configuration suitable for what you use it for?
Exactly, yeah. We had the Ministry of Social Development come in to look at the space, and they think it's fine for the children. They put a number on how many children we're allowed to have in that space. So, yeah, no, it's perfectly fine, thank you.
Councillor Leggett.
Thanks for that, Eileen. Can you tell us what your options would be if the lease was not renewed?
There doesn't seem to be a lot of options in the bay because we've looked before, and St Timothy's across the road, we're quite happy to have us, but the only problem with St Timothy's is they have a funeral at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We've got nowhere to go, you know. So, yeah, we're pretty limited actually. And especially because of that bus as well for those young children coming in, it's just so ideal at being right outside the hall.
All right. Councillor Ford.
Sorry, Eileen, can you just tell us how many kids this would affect? How many do you have currently in your program?
We've probably got about, when I say 70 children on our roll, we don't have 70 children every day, but it would affect a lot of families, yeah. And when I say that to you as well, it's the beginning of the year, so our numbers are still growing as they do in the first term and a half, you know.
Okay, I think that covers off everyone's questions. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And that'll bring us through to Amanda Joe.
Apologies, it's just a scrabble to write this. Morena ko Amanda toko ingoa. 3.5 years ago, I spoke regarding Te Reti Hall. Some of you are familiar faces, some of you are new. This discussion dates back a lot longer for me. I have been a part of the Tite Bay community for over 15 years. My children attend Tite Bay Intermediate and Mana College. I have started a number of community initiatives during this time. Food is Free Porirua, which encourages people to grow their own kai and be more sustainable and being able to help their families. Community Kete, which was a community food pantry in Dimmock Street. And also Nahua o Te Tahi, which is a community fruit tree project across 3 sites in Tite Bay. One of them is in the Tite Bay shopping area next to the library, which is close to where Te Reti Hall is. I also work for a charitable organisation working in schools with youth. Some of you will be aware of some of the projects that we do, including harbour cleanups, rest home visits, etc. Talking about social justice, but I'll go into that later on. 8 years ago, I volunteered with the Porirua City Council supported teaser project. I don't know how many of you remember that. It was a while back now. This was a project fully endorsed by and supported by the Porirua City Council, which talked about communities. It talked about bringing people together into hubs. It was in Porirua City CBD. It was about encouraging use of the CBD. It was about bringing together different ideas and different groups to talk about what they do and how they do it, and exposing people to really different ideas than they would have actually thought about, whether it was about funerals and planning your funerals and how you want to pass when the time comes, whether it was about growing food and sustainability, whether it was about having meaningful conversations. And I found it really interesting.
involved a lot of artists from around the Wellington region. Now, one of those artists, Tim Barlow, I started talking to him. He was supposed to be working in the CBD, but he asked me, it was his project, but then he asked me to give him a tour of Titei Bay. So I did that, and I showed him around the shopping area, and he goes, oh, well, it's looking a bit sad. And I think a few of you remember how sad it was looking back then, and very unloved. We talked about the Marine Hall, how it was unloved, and the reason why it was unloved and dilapidated, because a lot of people didn't care about it. A lot of people had totally disconnected to it because they didn't have access to it. The only people, at the time that I lived there, I never got access to it. I never went in it. Because I hadn't seen one of the performances, it was outside really what I could validate as to be able to afford tickets to go to the theatre. So I was many people that lived in Titei Bay but never got in the Marine Hall. So it was left on the back burner by the council, and eventually it was pulled down. And yeah, I understand. So I'm not going to get into that discussion. And he asked me, well, where do people meet? Where do people gather? And I said, well, the only options in Titei Bay are the shopping area where you can mill around, where there was not even a cafe back then. Or the other place that people meet was the beach. And I said, there is no other opportunity. He goes, what, there's no community hall? And I said, no, there is no community hall. Nowhere where people can share what their knowledge is. And with Titei Bay, we're a high diverse area. We've got people that are artists, we've got lawyers, we've got doctors, we've got plumbers. We've got a lot of people from a huge range of walks of life. So what happened is that he said, well, you should bring people together. So we ended up doing the first boat shed festival. And I started that with 2 other people. And that was about what it was about, bringing everyone from Titei Bay into a common place, because there was no place. And there still isn't today. I understand the concerns with Bay Kids Club about their facilities and the need for before and after school care. However, my concerns are that only utilises the hall 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, and only 40 weeks of the year. I feel that's an underuse of that facility. And there is home-based care available, which is what my children used when they were young, in Titei Bay. There is also, I've spoken to someone, a friend of mine who is in the Porirua Theatre. They said that the Niblick Hall is actually not available, that it's not in use before school, and it is not in use from about 3 o'clock until about 6 o'clock on weekdays either. So there is a potential maybe that Bay Kids Club could locate to that premises. The radio club, I appreciate their use, but there is a need for, they could go to I think they should go to the emergency management centre where it's outside of a tsunami zone.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
Yeah.
I'll just note we've come to the end of your 5 minutes. I will very quickly check to see if there are any questions from councillors, but otherwise we'll look to wrap up there. No questions from councillors? All right. Well, thank you very much for your submission. I don't believe our missing submitter has arrived, so that brings us to the end of those submissions. I'd just like to thank everyone who has come in and provided an oral submission today, as well as all of the written submissions as well. In a moment I'll put the motion. I will just remind councillors that we are not voting on anything substantive here. We're just voting to receive these submissions. So we'll receive the report, the 52 written submissions, the 5 oral submissions that we've heard today, and note that the hearing schedule is subject to change. So I've already put it and had it seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much again to everyone who has submitted. That moves us on to our next item, 7.2, the Porirua City Council Transport Bylaw. I'll move the report to open it for discussion. Councillor Ford, thank you very much. And could I invite council officers to speak to the report?
Through the chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so we'll take the report as read. So we'll just jump straight into questions. Does anyone have any questions on this? Councillor Hayward.
Kia mana, mihi kanihira katoa. Thank you for the report, Smagafu. I note with regards to some of the engagement on the proposed changes in affected households, I'll use the example of Main Road and Titahi Bay, do council officers use alternate or use their judgment to figure out alternate ways of approaching residents when they have not responded to requests for feedback in these situations?
So, Councillor Hayward, we have adopted a consistent method for consultation, and that's to deliver letters up until now. But we are, for example, for the road closures, we're now kind of expanding that and putting things on our consultation website. So we've got a road safety page on the council website where we put all our active consultations and direct people to that, and even going and putting it on social media. So although we don't do it at the moment for these types of consultations, we're more than happy to start putting it on social media pages and things like that.
One other question, and this may come up in a subsequent Puna Kōrero meeting, but I am just noting that when these changes are made, especially around parking areas and zones, can officers be certain that they will be able to enforce parking rules? A few days ago, we received, thanks to the work of Councillor Ford, note about a site that was already council controlled, has rules around parking, and yet there's still an issue around parking. And the resourcing and the issues that are brought up in that, which she responded to, lead me to think, if these rules are put in place, can council actually enforce the rules?
I'll just answer that, Councillor Hayward. We do not enforce every restriction every day. We simply don't have the resource to do that. So we do it on a complaints basis, and from time to time, when there are particular problems, we will focus our enforcement efforts at that time. But we simply don't have an army of enforcement officers who can go out and enforce everything all the time. So it is largely complaints-based for these kind of restrictions.
They've answered my question. No more questions.
Well, thank you. I think Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to Councillor Hayward, I just had some queries around the consultation process. Every year or every time we go out to consult, we have this sort of similar results come back, and I want to direct you to Driver Crescent as an example. Of the 68 landowners that were contacted, only 5 responded, so that's 7% roughly. And every time we have a similar response in terms of these consults. What exactly are we going to do to change or shift that response? Because we want our people to be engaged and feel like they're being listened to. Mm-hmm. However, when we get these sort of results, and in some cases the results come back and the ones that do respond are all opposing, and then we actually then go and still do what we want to, or what has been recommended in the paper. Can you give us some assurance that we are looking to maybe shift the results that come back to us, and that we are engaging or consulting more effectively? And I know there's issues around resource, but there surely has to be a different way that we do these things so that we get our people more engaged.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ford. Yeah, I agree. And there's a couple of parts to it. There's the fact that people usually respond when it affects them directly, and if it doesn't, then they just don't bother responding. The other part, I kind of mentioned already, we're happy to put it on social media. I think that will make a difference, because especially like our young people, they're less likely to respond to a consultation letter. But if it's on social media, it's quite easy to put a comment in or send something through, and we will take that into consideration. It doesn't have to be written down on paper. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor. We're happy.
Thank you. I have a comment and a question. The first comment is that the brilliant idea about that pedestrian crossing being raised on Mungavin Avenue there. I guess you've worked it in with the parking with the yellow lines, because I can tell you, and a lot of people can see people walking across the road because the cars are parked on there. So, and I'd like to know when that's happening. The second question is, I noticed that. there were a couple of people who objected. Are these the people that don't have a driveway and have to walk up those stairs up to their properties up the top?
Yep.
So
So,
that's
Councillor,
two
we're happy.
questions.
Yes. First part, when? It's part of the school safety program, so it's planned to be delivered before June 2024. So it's going to be starting shortly, and then we've got a whole bunch of schools, and it's one of the first ones, so it'll be potentially this financial year, maybe flowing in to the next. And the second part, who? Yes, it is those people that live up there, and they currently, from their submission, it sounded like they just park up on the footpath and load. And they're the ones that are, opposing it.
So then what would be their option?
So they would have to use one of the other nearby parking spaces and walk their stuff, whatever it is, a little bit further,
So has anybody ever taken 5 bags of shopping up those stairs? I can tell you I certainly have experience doing that. Not stairs, a pathway, but it would be quite hard for them if they have to park so far away to have limited access to their properties. Would there be, I don't know how this could be possible, but could there be like 1 or 2 parks that would be specific for those residents, not particularly in that space, but as close by as possible, or not?
We wouldn't provide spaces specifically for them. It would just be public parking, so it would be open to anyone to use, but could be potentially time restricted parking, and like short term, maybe like P15 or something. So there's high turnover, so it's just for loading, unloading. Yeah.
Guys, I'm just a little bit worried about that particular area from a health and safety point of view. Brilliant that those yellow lines would be good, particularly with people using the crossing. But my problem, my concern is that those residents that are living in those properties where they've only got stairs access is quite concerning.
Yeah.
So I'm just I don't.
The point I was trying to get across was that it's a few people that will be negatively impacted by the change, but there's going to be a much larger portion of people that will benefit from the change. And some of those things that they're doing, like parking on the footpath, is not legal anyway. So it's already taking away from safety. So kind of stopping that is going to have a positive impact as well on safety for children and the rest of the community.
Do you know who owns those properties?
No.
Is it kainga ora or are they privately owned?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look
think
it
it
up.
should be a conversation with the owners of those properties and not the people that rent it.
Councillor Ford.
Sorry, it was just in addition to Councillor Wehapi's questions as well. Is there an opportunity for that area that you are now putting yellow lines in, because the people you're trying to influence or you're trying to make the road safer for are for the students? So is there an ability for outside of school hours for those to revert back to car parks, or to, I don't know, something, just some way to meet them halfway? Because I note that the 4 that I was talking about that opposed this were the only 4 that responded of those that were affected. And so we're going to go back to them and say, thanks for giving us your feedback. We're still going to go march along, and we're not even going to meet you halfway or anything. Just in addition to Councillor Wehapi's.
We can consider it. It's not just for school kids as well. There's a bus stop there on both sides of the road, and people do cross there, and so it's for the rest of the community as well. Yeah.
I'm trying to think about some areas around Porirua where you've got different lines that those lines are in effect during school hours.
Yeah, we can.
And then they're not.
We can do that. It's possible. It's time restricted parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Mayor Baker.
Sorry.
It was just a suggestion for loading and unloading lines, that was all. So they actually could park for 5 minutes to unload.
Yeah.
Councillor Leggett?
Sorry, yeah, I mean, I agree, because the precedents have already been set. Like Parimata School, for example, has exactly the same sorts of restrictions outside it. So people do get to understand those very quickly, and we are cutting off options that people have currently. So I think it would be a good idea to consider that, even if it's loading, unloading, or whatever, to take another look at that.
So can I check, is someone proposing
Can I ask that we move that from the table, just that item, and they come back with a update on it? Because I don't think we should be passing that one. So can we remove that one from the paper till next month or 6 weeks when you come back with another option?
Yeah, I'll look for advice. Are there any issues with us removing that single item?
Through the chair, happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Just to make sure, I'm happy to put that as an amended
Yeah, just do
motion.
it as amended.
And can I just clarify to make sure I get this right, sorry, exactly what I'm referring to here?
10, attachment 10, we just would want to have that withdrawn.
Attachment 10. Okay, I'll note that. Are there any other questions?
Can you
beyond
just
that?
clarify when that's going to come back to the table?
If we leave it on the table, is that 1 month?
We'll be coming back in a month or two. Just through the chair, I think this is Ethel's last meeting with us. Ethel? Ethel's moving to Aberley Transport Planning Consultants, so sorry to lose him.
Councillor Leggett?
Just out of interest, Ethel, so we've dealt with these for quite a while now. How many more are in the pipeline in terms of these sorts of changes?
So we still have a backlog of these types of reports from last year. So there are still more coming related to the bus stop changes that Greater Wellington want to do and various other things.
So it's particularly related to bus stop changes, not restricting parking
Through
further
the chair, I think as a good practice, we'd be coming on a regular basis where residents are complaining to us, councillors are complaining to us about safety situations, where we'd look at it. So Ethel's been working through the backlog. Then we have a school safety program. And he's alluded to Greater Wellington Regional Council and their bus program. They have new buses. They're concerned about disabled people getting onto the buses. They want to make it safer for buses to get in and out, so more yellow lines required. So there will be a program coming back. They'll be coming to speak, to speak to you about that. And you can expect quite a number of on-street car parks to be removed to enable better public transport in Porirua.
There's the other couple that I'd like to mention. There's the mobility parkings that we're looking at across the city, so that'll be coming shortly. We're looking to add shared parts, so a new shared part schedule so that they're formal. And then after that, we'll also be looking to clean up the bylaws and sorting out broken yellow line discrepancies and just cleaning it up. So that'll be a big piece of work as well.
Cool. I had Councillor Felo with a question.
Thank you. Ethel, I've got a question. It's about it's actually about, Kenapuru Landing. I was just wondering, I heard from a resident, and it might have already happened. I know there's been a few emails coming around. Has it already happened? They wanted apparently broken yellow lines where the hospital and the bridges, I can't remember the name of the street off the top of my head, but it was based, might be Ambulance Drive, but apparently they were there, the lines were there, and then when there was work done to the road, they got taken off and they were meant to get put back on, and the residents said that they were informed that it would have to go through a process like this. So,
okay.
Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that one. But we could look into it if you let me know which road it is.
Because I think the issue was a lot of parking is on both sides because of the construction going on, and then cars and heavy vehicles, it's causing a bit of a health and safety hazard. So I'll talk to you after maybe. Okay.
Cool.
All right, I think that covers off everything. So just so councillors understand what we're going to do here is that I'll propose with the leave of the meeting that we make that proposed amendment. We don't have to go through a formalised amendment to do that. I just want to make sure we get this recorded properly. So I'll just double check. So I think this started Councillor Weehappy. Just looking in the report itself, where exactly this is listed. I'm just trying to find it. 43 to 48. .10. Okay, cool. So what I will do is I will put the motion, but with the leave of the meeting, removing 4.10.
Speaking to the point of order. Councillor Waddle has just raised a point. Are we just talking about the image, or are we talking about the substantive element of the recommendation?
I believe the
recommendation element.
Okay, I'll just clarify. Are officers happy with the information that we've provided, that this can be accurately recorded?
Through the chair, we understand exactly what you've asked for, and we'll get it right.
Cool. I believe if the officers are happy that they understand exactly what we've asked for, I'm comfortable with that. So if there are no further questions, I will put the motion with that amendment. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. And thank you very much, Athol.
Thank you.
Good luck for your new role as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you. Miss you too.
All right, we will now be moving into public excluded. So I will move that we go into public excluded. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Hayward, thank you very much. All those in favour? Opposed? That is carried.